Welcome viewers to the next episode of Rethinking Content, where I've been talking to marketing leaders from varied industries to understand what's changed in content in this new normal. Today I have with me Pooja Thakran. She's currently working as the Senior Director Corporate Communications and CSR for Honeywell India and Honeywell Technology Services. She has over 27 years of experience. She has won many awards as well, like Sabre Award winner for Brand Communications, AG's Award for CSR, GSMA and CRI Award for CSR. So she carries over 2 decades of leadership experience working with many Fortune 500 companies like GE, Telenor, HP, Aon Hewitt, Hailstorm, among others. Pooja, welcome to the show. It's an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Karthik. It's a pleasure for me to be joining today for this session, and I really look forward to the conversation. And it's an interesting topic and an interesting area that you cover. So a pleasure is all mine.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Pooja, the pandemic kind of disrupted a lot of industries, and marketing had to completely unlearn and relearn a lot of things in this new normal, right? So what are some new marketing challenges that you as a marketing leader or your marketing team is facing in this new normal?
Yeah, I mean, you said it right. There always has been a disruption in the market, always. But what we have seen with pandemic has been something which is catastrophic. It is something that we've never ever seen, never ever even thought that something like this would come our way. So everybody was caught off guard when this whole pandemic came in, and there was so much of uncertainty. Brands were struggling because they didn't know what to do. A lot of them, almost like 40% of them, just went silent, or maybe more. There was a complete blackout because brands didn't want to be there. Usually, the thumb rule is where you don't like to place your brand when there is so much of negative news.
Sure.
So a lot of brands went, blank. They did not want to communicate. And to topple it up, there was a lot of mistrust. There was a lot of fake information. There was a lot of the whole social media was exploding with so much on the pandemic, which was anyways negative, and anyways it was so much grim and very, very disturbing news that we were seeing all over. So I think at that time there were certain brands that actually elevated themselves and were front and center when it came to really taking up the position of trying to make sure that they are decoding this whole mystery that is coming up and was unfolding in front of us. So a lot of brands actually took that pivotal role in terms of driving the right information, making sure that people were seeing or really getting credible information. And there were companies who were trying to see how we can demystify what was happening, how the market is going to come up, what would be that post-pandemic world, or the new normal as we called it. So, there were companies who were coming up with these information. I think that's how the companies that came up and try to decode, try to have that humane, face to the brand, or try to look at credible information, were the ones who gained trust. And if you talk about brands today, there are two things which are very, very paramount to a brand. One is to create awareness, and the second one is to build trust. These are the two things which are for a brand. So I think, and trust, as you see it, especially during the pandemic, with so much going on in the world, you see what is happening in US, you see what is happening in India, the farmers out protesting and stuff like that. When you see so much happening, that gives you a sense that the trust is depleting. People are disturbed. The people are losing faith in the governments. There was this recent study by the Edelman Barometer of Trust. If you see that, it talks about, the good that I can take away from there is that businesses are more trusted than governments, than media. So that's actually brings in a lot of kudos in the hands of the businesses, that they may be doing something right, but at the same time, with that also brings in responsibility. That may be power, but it comes with a lot of responsibility that they need to take it up. They need to take responsibility for the content that they're generating, for the tonality of the messages, for the information that they are imparting. So I think that's where I see, every challenge has an opportunity, but we need to be careful about how we use that opportunity, and continue to build that trust.
As a communication professional, I think it reminds me of the Spider-Man. There's a dialogue in the Spider-Man movie, right? With great power comes great responsibility. So I think as communication professionals, there's that additional responsibility in building trust with your customer, and especially in such negative times.
That's right.
So from a content standpoint, how do you see that playing a role, in building that trust with the customers?
I've always heard, being a communications person, content is king.
Yeah.
And that is one cliche that we've always lived with. True. Whenever we talk about content. As a communicator, for me, content is everything. We really need to have some great content. But right now, we need to think about and take a step back as an organization. What is the kind of content that we are talking about? Is it, a lot of companies nowadays try to hard sell, and there is this approach to talking about the benefits of the products that you want to talk about, or the brand, or, really trying to think about from a product point of view. I think we keep talking about the customer needs, but somewhere we need to also talk about not just talking about our product, but seeing how it is solving the needs of the customers. And the content which actually leads with some facts, leads with empathy, leads with solving rather than selling, are the ones which are going to really cut the ice when it comes to customers. Because nowadays, if you look, especially because we are in a post-pandemic world and we are reviving, we are going through a recovery. One of the area that we need to focus on is definitely about making sure that we are not hard selling. We're not using this opportunity to really trying to drive, because people are going to watch out who's going to really who's in cashing on this opportunity. So we need to be a little careful about not being seen as really taking advantage, but actually solving and being empathetic and being out there supporting. And those are the things that are really going to bring in a lot of value to the brand, and will hold the brand in a lot of good stead. There will be trust that will build once we are seen to be really acting with empathy. We are leading with a lot of facts. Another area that I think will play a very big role is the tonality. Especially for certain brands who really thrive on being very, very catchy, very edgy, very playful. That's again a challenge for them. How do they really generate? Because most of the social media is full of these kind of quirky messages and very edgy messages and stuff like that. So, and there are brands which thrive on it, and especially on social media. So this may not be the right time to really go really very edgy. They need to really make sure that they are not so preachy also, but not so quirky also. So there has to be a fine balance that one has to maintain when it comes to a lot of lot of content which you put out there. And obviously, we all know content is the heart of digital strategies. So it's not just about the kind of content that you generate, but what is the distribution strategy that you have, because while we say content is king, distribution is queen. So
both are equally important.
Very, very important. So we need to make sure that we balance it out with the right distribution strategies, having the right channels in place. I'm a big fan of integrated, because I come from the age when we had traditional media. So I normally don't like to just drive one sort of very isolated strategy around social media. I would rather look at a complete integrated package, which would include on-ground activations. How will you do it? PR, digital, social, everything put together. So those are the things that I would.
True. So when we one very interesting aspect which I came across, and while I was researching for my book, The Thought Leader Way, was also that post the pandemic situation, brands are now, especially the B2B decision makers, are a lot more cautious on what they're spending on, and they're
Hmm.
evaluating brands more on the thought leadership that they are demonstrating.
Yeah.
And in fact, the data showed that about close to 60% of them use that as a primary criteria to evaluate service providers, and over 40% were willing to pay a premium for the brand when they were convinced that these guys are thought leaders in their space. So,
Yeah.
so how do you think B2B brands can look at creating content which showcases thought leadership? Because right now what's happening is, because content is king and everything is more digital, so
Correct.
so marketers think that, yeah, let's just flood the channels with content, but
Hmm.
actually that does not translate to thought leadership per se.
Correct.
So what would be your advice for that?
Yeah, I mean, I will go back to my this study that I read again, the whole
Yes.
Edelman
Yeah.
parameter study. There was a section which talked about who should be front ending the speech and the
Hmm.
leader messages, which are the
Hmm.
leaders that you trust.
Hmm.
Uh, Interestingly, I want to bring that aspect back because there they talked about that the trust in the government leaders, even the NGO partners, the activists, some of these people have really gone down.
Yeah.
Even that matter CEOs of big
Oh.
corporate. Yeah, the one they really trust is are the experts, the
Hmm.
research, the
Huh.
doctor.
Huh. Yes.
So you will see a lot of brands, even when they are doing the talking, they
Hmm.
are bringing in experts to come and do the talking. So
Hmm. Hmm.
when you build the thought leadership, you need to think and weigh in whether your CEO is the right one to really go out and give the message, or can your doctors or researchers or people in your community who are considered the SMEs are the ones who should be considered for that. For delivering the message. I think
Yeah.
that's one big area when it comes to thought leadership and building credible content. So that's one aspect that I would like to bring in when we consider thought leadership. So the medium which goes out and communicates is extremely important. Um, uh, Nowadays you see a lot of panel discussions.
Yeah.
Most of the brands are using that, whether it is paid promotions or paid campaigns or paid channels that they can deploy in partnership with so many other other providers. So panel discussions are also very good medium to actually build your thought leadership in that space. So topics can be covered through various experts coming together and talking about it. Another area of thought leadership, I'm a big fan of case studies, best
Yeah.
practices. Share your best practices. Seeing is believing. So
Yeah.
a lot of brands are also building mechanics to see how they can use data to drive the kind of content people need
Hmm.
um, and the customer need. And usually for a B2B brand, a long format really works well.
Yeah.
So case studies are really brilliant when you have to build that thought leadership, taking a topic, showing what it is, and showing is believing. So when you start
Hmm.
to showcase what you build or what you bring to the table, I think it adds a lot of value.
True, true. On that particular aspect, from a B2B content perspective, it's always been the serious kind of communication, right? So your white
Hmm.
papers, your case studies, and everything seems to be so serious. And when you look at B2C, there's a lot more experimentation that happens.
Hmm.
And now with a lot of that, the Gen Z and those guys coming into the workforce, and eventually they will in turn become your conversation points as well. So do you
Hmm.
think that will have an impact on how B2B content itself will probably change with respect to formats?
See, I mean, I do understand that Gen Z, we expect them to have more flair for funny stuff or more,
Uh,
bite-sized
yeah.
communication and bite-sized messaging or content. But when you look at, I mean, it's all up to you. Who are you trying to reach out to? And of course, the big aspect is how do you make your customer personas, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
You know, and that segmentation of your customer personas is extremely important. So
Mm.
what is the age, what is the demographic, what is the level, blah blah blah. So but when we talk about B2B,
Yeah.
we are talking about a customer which is a decision maker, which would be a certain level, which will have certain expertise, which will be looking out for exactly what they need for their jobs to do well. So a B2B profile of a customer versus a B2C is extremely different. So you need to really decouple that and look at it from what is it that they would be seeking to as a value that they're seeking. And B2B, I mean, since we're talking B2B, I'd like to focus on that. It's very value driven. I mean, what is the content really adding value to is because they, at the end of the day, the reason why we are looking, they are looking at you is because they want to either close the deal or have an interest, or that may be a lead generation. So it all leads to an outcome of sorts where you get some interest from them to seek the product or the service or the solution that they're looking at. So generally what we see is that profile will be a bit more looking at certain serious stuff. But at the same time, usually what I've seen is that, if you're into healthcare, you have to have a certain tonality. You can't be so frivolous because healthcare is a very serious space. So even if the Gen X is coming in, they would look at it from that lens, whether you are really serious, because it's at the end of the day, lives of people matter. So it's a very, very serious space. But if you're a technology company and you're actually dealing with Gen Zs, yes, there will be that, you can go a little bit more edgy, but then at the end of the day, it's a business that they want to close the deal with. So they would be looking at that seriousness, that commitment, that expertise has to be there. So I hope I'm answering.
Yes. No, that's very valid. So I think while you still try to experiment, it's important that you're not losing out on the seriousness and the value addition that you're bringing for them to make the decisions. So you spoke about leveraging experts to build thought leadership and building that trust, because people don't trust even to that extent CEOs of the organization on what they are saying. So from a content and communication standpoint, if you were to look at, so now do you believe it makes more sense to outsource things and collaborate there, or do you think it makes sense to do it in-house, or is there a hybrid model? What is your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I've experimented with both. I mean, I used to have a team in my previous organizations where we had a huge digital team sitting out of the organization on our roles. And then I've had where we had to completely outsource it to digital agencies and ask them to take care of the content and the looking at the content strategy or the channel strategy or overall campaign strategy. My personal view is that it is as good as the people that you employ, right? So sometimes if you really have a very good geek working with you, who's really out there and has got tons and tons of experience working with different brands and different consumers, they can really turn around very good stuff. But in general, the only thing with agencies is the scale and the number of people that they have, where you tend to get more good ideas. You tend to have much more quirky and out of the box thinking, because they've come together as team, they brainstorm, and then they can really throw some interesting stuff at you. Also because they have more reach in terms of what the competition is doing, research. They can come and share what they are doing for some other clients, and then they bring in a lot of different thinking. So I think I would I'm slightly bending towards giving it to an external agency, not keeping it too internal, because usually we don't even have the luxuries of having too many FTEs or full-time employees with us. For me it is because for me it is a lot of good ideas has to come, and digital marketing is all about a lot of quirky ideas, a lot of out of the box ideas, just experimenting, going and trying out new things, and that's the beauty of what digital is all about. You can really experiment, you can do a lot of fun stuff there, and that has to come from a team of people who can curate, who can brainstorm and come up with some interesting stuff for you to review.
True. So my last question to you would be, what do you see will be the future of content marketing with with it becoming a lot more data centric, with AI coming into picture. So what do you foresee the future for content marketing?
I think one of the biggest thing is it has to be authentic. And today, see, authentic content is something which is ruling the roost, and that is all about how are brands really using their consumers. For example, a lot of them, like Apple, for example, is using such interesting real life examples of
Yeah.
how Apple can be used with even during pandemic. They had these very nice videos of how people are using Apple in their day-to-day lives, which is very user-generated content,
Yeah.
which makes it very authentic.
True.
I think brands will be bending towards more authentic content, more user relatable content, which they can people can relate to, people can get some ideas around, and that's what will drive content. A second big thing is about which is the kind of content. What should be your content mix?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we all know, like there was this Cisco Virtual Networking Index, which talks
Yeah.
about 80% of the content is actually video content. And we see it in our offices also. The moment you post a video, it gets a lot of pickup and people see it. But when you have a text, you
Yeah.
don't see that index really moving, because only a certain percentage of people really go down and read all the text.
Correct.
So I think video is always going to rule. I think that's the way it is going to be. Podcast is also picking up in India. We do have those stats saying that podcast is picking up. Visual is also interesting, and if you make it nice, infographics and all are going to be the way to go. Long format to a certain extent will be limited to B2B. B2C is all bite-sized micro content. Yeah, so I think that's where it is all going to be. Another area which I think a lot of people in the US and a couple of other big brands are experimenting with is crowdsourcing content. I mean, I feel that I'm a big fan of it. Even in when I go do things in office, I would like to just do crowdsource the videos. Okay, let's get this. Let's get people kicking on. Okay, share your videos about this topic. Share your ideas about how we should do this. So I think crowdsourcing some of the content is going to be very, very interesting, because you get some interesting stuff, and that would really help us to also engage with Gen Zs.
Yes.
They like to relate to such content much more. So nobody wants to look at things which are very scripted or which are very artificial in a way. So people are looking for that humaneness in the content. People are looking for relatability in the content, and I think that's where it will be. And like you said, data, yes. I mean, there is no denying it is. Everything has to be very data led, and we need to use the right analytics to drive the kind of data. I mean, not just because we want to make it relevant for the customers or the target audience that we're trying to reach, also because we want to maximize the bang for the buck. So I think from that standpoint also, analytics will play a huge role in how we drive content, how we generate content, how we distribute content. So I think that's definitely going to be a given. There is no denying that.
Sure, true. So it is being human, relatable content, and content which builds trust for the brand, with the irrespective of what audience you're interacting with. I think that's what the future holds for content. So Pooja, thanks once again for sharing your views and perspectives. Very practical, and I'm sure the viewers would really benefit from your insights. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Karthik. Thanks a lot.